Now, while many other African countries had football associations, for example, DR Congo, the countries didn't have the same luxury that Egypt had, which was being its own nation. As some of you may know, Africa was still very much colonized well into the 1960s. So prior to there being a national football confederation in Africa, there was Egypt. Egypt was basically running solos in the African international football from 1920 to around 1950, which is when Sudan came around. But even though Egypt was around and it was historical that what they were doing, there were more downs than ups. The first time an African team participated in an official international tournament was in the 1920 Olympics. Egypt participated in it, and unfortunately in the first round they fell to Italy. They did kind of redeem themselves afterwards in a friendly match against the Kingdom of SCS, or modern-day Croatia, Serbia, and the nations in that area, where Egypt won that match. Egypt would then return for the 1924 Olympics, in which this time they did better. They were victorious in their first match against Hungary, and they would then fall to Sweden in the quarterfinals. And then would come the big one, the big historic moment in Egypt. In the beginning of their stages, Egypt would once again return to the 1928 Olympics, in which Egypt would make a historic run. Egypt would beat Turkey in the round of 16, then Egypt would beat Portugal in the quarterfinals. In the semifinals, unfortunately, Egypt would lose to Argentina, and then in the third place match, Egypt would once again fall to Italy. But reaching a fourth place position in just 8 years of your football's nation's existence is 100% something to be admired from the very first African nation to have its own national team. And then as the years went by, FIFA created the 1930 World Cup. And unfortunately, anything after this is pretty much up and down. So all the FIFA members were invited to participate in the 1930 World Cup, right? And Egypt was a member. They were due to participate, but unfortunately they withdrew because they missed the ship that was going to take them to South America. Though, to be fair, that wasn't their fault, as there was a storm in the Mediterranean that caused them to miss the connection. So, no African team in the 1930 World Cup. It wasn't until the 1934 World Cup that Egypt would have its first taste of the FIFA stuff. The first African nation to participate in things that pertain to the World Cup, to FIFA things. For the qualifiers, there were a total of 12 groups. Since there wasn't any other African teams or any confederations yet, Egypt was set to play Turkey, who today plays in the Europe Confederation, and Mandatory Palestine, who FIFA acknowledges as the modern-day Israel. Now, Turkey withdrew before the qualifiers started, meaning Egypt and Mandatory Palestine would face each other to see who would take the group's sole ticket to the World Cup. And Egypt thrashed Mandatory Palestine, meaning Egypt became the first African nation at a World Cup. And then in 1937, Egypt was due to play Romania for its 1938 World Cup qualifiers match. However, Egypt officials refused to play since the match was scheduled in the holy month of Ramadan. FIFA didn't reschedule, which meant Egypt would have to withdraw from the qualifiers. And unfortunately, the African nations would continue to face struggles after struggles due to heavy political setbacks in football. And that is one of the things that I'm going to be talking about in the next video.